travel with me from now on? He's a flag stand, so
You have to ask her.
I'll have to borrow it. Hi, I'm Joe Stutler, and I am the Iowa State Democratic Party's adjutant for the Veterans Caucus. I also serve on the DNC's Veterans and Military Families Council representing Iowa. I would like to ask you all, as we start today, to take a moment to think about, we are in the longest period of war in U.S. history. We just went over 18 years just a couple weeks ago. So kids that were born the day the war started can enlist. Strange. We have Gold Star families grieving. We have Blue Star families waiting, hoping. We have friends and family also waiting and hoping and wondering. Thank you. We have 22 veterans a day committing suicide. We have even more family members going through the same. As they say, war is hell. So take a moment and remember these people that are out there fighting for all of us. Thank you. Now, as we begin, I would like to ask those of you who are willing and able, please stand, put your hands over your heart so we can lead with the pledge, start with the pledge. For those of you that would prefer to take a knee, that's perfectly fine. You will not offend this combat veteran at all. I believe in freedom of speech. I fought for it. Veterans, present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's be brief. Thank you, Joe.
Hi, my name's Scott. This is my mom's house. My mom, Blanche.
Mom, come over here.
Come over to the corner there.
Mom.
Anyway, just to fill you on her backstory, so she's 93, going on 94, and she was born in this house. Back when Oasis was a lot bigger, here she is, this is Blanche. And she was gracious enough to offer up her house because mine is too much of a mess. Anyway, so we live in strange times, as we probably know. And Tulsi has stood out to me for quite a while, since I first became aware of her in the 2016 election when she had to quit to support Senator Sanders. And since then, I've done a little bit of research. I recommend that everybody that would like a deeper dive into seeing her present herself, which she does remarkably well. She's done a couple big, long interviews with Joe Rogan that outline in very clear terms her project for getting out of unnecessary wars and trying to make it trying back to, let's say, to serve the people. If you look at her biography too, what you'll notice is there are a lot of firsts. The first female combat veteran to run for president, one of the first elected to Congress, and you're the first active Hindu in Congress, the first American Samoan. Anyway, I'd run out of time if I kept on doing all your firsts. So let's just thank her so much for making the effort to come here to Iowa and speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Aloha.
Aloha.
How are you guys today? Good, good. Scott, thank you so much for your long-standing support and for inviting us here. But most of all, thanks to your mom, Blanche, for opening up your home to us. 93 years young. You are incredible. You are amazing. And great to meet your daughter, Pat, here as well. Can we give their family, please, our thanks and our gratitude? It really means so much. Thank you. And thanks to all of you for coming out today. It's great to see you. I want to say thanks to our volunteers who are here today. Thanks to thanks to Steve, who is here, who is our sound genius. There he is. Make sure, I tried to tell him before we came here, I said, go to the football game, go have fun. We're just going to hang out in the living room. We'll relax. But he refused. So thank you. Thank you. Service above self, right, Steve? Well, I want to open it up to have a discussion with you. I want to hear what's on your mind, so I'll just say a few brief remarks really about why we're gathered here today. I think there's so much frustration and dissatisfaction with the status quo, with the governance that we see today, right? Does everybody disagree with me? Everybody agree with me? You might disagree with me later. If so, cool, let's talk about it. But I think this is one thing that we can all agree on, that for too long now, we have a government in Washington that is so disconnected from the reality of the everyday lives that we live all across this country. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, doesn't matter. Our government is one that is of, by, and for the rich and powerful. It is not a government that is truly living up to the values and the principles and the vision that our founders had for us, that we would have a government of, by, and for the people. And that's really what gets to the heart of the change that we are seeking to bring about to our party, our Democratic Party, and to our government, to ensure that it is every single day staying single-pointedly focused on how can we best serve the people of this country. How are we making sure that we are listening to the needs and the challenges that people all across this country are facing? And what are we doing to come together as leaders in this country to actually solve these problems, to get past the hyper-partisan bickering and the rhetoric that goes back and forth, the name-calling and mudslinging that you see going back and forth, this focus that we see from leaders in both parties in Washington that is really centered around what do we got to do to win the next election? And that's it. Not thinking about how the American people are the ones who are losing every single day that this goes on. Throughout my life, from the time that I first ran for office in Hawaii, state legislature back in 2002, volunteering to deploy to the Middle East twice with the Hawaii Army National Guard, serving on the Honolulu City Council, and then later in Congress. I've been motivated throughout my life with a deep desire and motivation to be of service, to do whatever I could with the time that I have in my life to make a positive impact on others. This is something that I experienced when I was very young, that I was happiest when I was doing things for other people, and something that I also understood from a relatively young age is just how short the time is that we have in this life. You know, it's maybe not something pleasant to think about, but our own mortality, waking up every day knowing, okay, this is another day that I've been blessed with. Let me see how I can best use this day to make a positive impact on others. During my deployment to Iraq in 2005, we got there early in January of that year. It was during the height of the Iraq War, and as we were making our way around the camp where we would be mostly based for that 12-month period, I saw a big sign that was on one of the main gates, as people would see. Every time they would leave, go out on patrol or go out on a mission, they would see this huge sign right at the gate that read in big block letters, "Is today the day?" Is today the day? It was a reminder every single day for every one of us that any day could be our last. That reminder has stuck with me. Yes, while deployed to a war zone, but also coming at home, because the same thing applies to us here. And I think this is where the call to action that we all have now should be clear. You know, thinking back to JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. This is a time when our country and our planet and our people are calling for all of us to come together as Americans to see how we will unite so that we can work for the best interest of our people and our nation, so that we can come together and actually begin to solve these deep systemic problems that have plagued us for so long. None of us knows how much time we have, Let's make the very most of every single day that we have been blessed with to do our best to be of service. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to our discussion now. Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Who wants to open it up? Don't be shy. All right. There you go. Right here. Right here.
Okay. Okay. My question is I'm really confused about the Democratic Party right now. In 2007, we had Barack Obama campaigning in Iowa. He basically won the caucus here because he wanted to get our troops out of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And he was running against Hillary Clinton, who I consider kind of a war hawk.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to the party. I don't know why I'm seeing pundits on TV promoting war, and why some of them are even asking us to go to war against Turkey, which is, I think, is crazy. And then they're getting advice from military generals on foreign policy instead of asking like State Department people. So I'm just really confused. I mean, you're in Washington. I'm not with these people. What's driving this?
I am also very sad to see how a party that was and has been traditionally the party of peace has become yet another party of warmongers and war hawks. And you see this has come about, unfortunately, due to the heavy influence of the foreign policy establishment in Washington that for decades has crossed both political parties. You see a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same people providing the same kinds of neocon or neolib advice to Democrat and Republican leaders. And you see the influence of the military-industrial complex. You see how people like myself and others are treated when we speak out and call for an end to these counterproductive regime change wars, like the one I served in Iraq, like the one in Libya, like the one ongoing in Syria. You see how we are smeared, how we are called names, and as if you've read the news over the last few days, we are called traitors to our nation, the nation that we love, the nation whose cloth I am proud to wear as a uniform and as a soldier and as a veteran. And so you see people in Washington who unfortunately lack the courage to stand up and speak for peace, to stand up to the foreign policy establishment, to stand up to the military-industrial complex, because they don't want to be called these names. They don't want to get the same kind of treatment that I am getting, which is very revealing for people who consider themselves leaders but who really turn out to be cowards. This is where all of us come in, and this speaks to the kind of change that we need to see in my own party, the Democratic Party. I look forward as a Democratic nominee to being able to take our party out of the hands of warmongers and special interests and corporations and put it back into the hands of the people. So the Democratic Party can be the party that truly represents the interests of the people, protecting our planet, working for the well-being of every single American, and fighting for peace. This can only happen when we, the people, stand up and make this change a reality. Here, you had someone up here? Yeah.
Hi, I'm a nurse in Cedar Rapids.
Thank you.
Talking about healthcare reform,
Yes.
everyone seems to be focused on insurance. And I think everybody deserves the right to healthcare access. But I think what gets left out is we have no infrastructure to support giving everybody access to healthcare. We have been in a nursing shortage for as long as I can remember. We have more nurses leaving than we do coming in. So what's being done?
Can I ask what, from friends of yours who've decided to do something else, what's the driving reason?
A lot of nurses go into management,
Okay.
education, which is, we're needed, but we have a lot that are retiring and a lot that are just burnt out. We're seeing suicide rates rise among nurses and doctors, just due to burnout.
Yeah.
And I just want to know why nobody's talking about putting in federal laws for safe nurse-patient ratios, or restricting the number of hours nurses are forced to work,
Yeah.
Eliminating mandatory overtime.
Yeah.
It's hard, we have to, I work in an emergency department, I can watch somebody die and then have to turn around. I have 2 minutes to pull it together and go into my next patient's room. But nobody wants to talk about, what we can do to support our nurses and our doctors.
Yeah.
So I know you supported the Safe Staffing Act that still has not been passed. And what's holding that up? Why can't we get support for our nurses and our doctors and our CNAs and our LPNs and our PAs and our NPs? They need that support, because if we're going to have millions more people accessing healthcare, we can barely support the patients we have now.
Yeah.
How are we going to support those with what we've got?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for your service and choosing a path of service with your own life, and for raising this incredibly important issue. I have now, for the last few years, been the Democratic co-chair of the Congressional Nursing Caucus, specifically to bring light to issues exactly like those that you're raising. My community back home in Hawaii, our state, like so many others all across this country, are facing extreme nursing shortages. I've gone to college graduations in our state, and we have amazing nursing programs in the community college as well as in the universities. We are graduating tons of nurses, but for us in our state, they're leaving, and they're going to work in other places where they can actually afford the cost of living. It's tough to survive in a high cost of living state like Hawaii, earning a starting salary as a nurse. So we've passed some legislation bringing the focus around education, professional development, and recruiting more nurses to fill this shortage that we're seeing. But you're exactly right. The leadership in Congress has failed to recognize the everyday challenges that are causing so many nurses to burn out and to walk away. So as you've said, I've supported and have been pushing legislation that would limit the number of hours that a nurse can work, that you have a limit to what the right balance of that nurse to patient ratio is, because ultimately not only are you as nurses being negatively impacted by this, it's also having a negative impact in the care that you are trying to provide to these patients. If you're just having to get to the next because you're working a double shift because you don't have enough nurses to take care of all of the people who are in need. I think you're raising this issue at such an important time where, the focus has been on two major issues that have been about the driving reason for the high cost of healthcare, but we need to address all of the other issues that exist within our broken healthcare system, and making sure that we are investing as a country, yes, in the government, but we are investing as a country in the healthcare providers is so critical. There are many other things there that I believe we need to address that have to do with more preventive health care, making it so that it's more accessible, so that folks living in rural communities are not having to travel great distances or at great cost just to be able, whether it's to go to a checkup or to get the care that they need. There's so much opportunity within our healthcare system to both bring down the cost of delivering healthcare while ensuring we're investing those dollars exactly where they're needed in our providers, and making sure that access to quality care exists for every American in this country. Keep up the great work, and thank you for continuing to share this message and bring voice to so many other people. Thank you.
You had me with aloha.
Aloha.
Noel, I work somewhat for the competition, but also Soldiers in Arms. We are in healthcare at the University of Iowa, which is a public institution.
Why
So,
is this the competition?
I was being facetious.
Okay, good. It's like, what's going on here? What's the real story?
Main hospital provider.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, the nurses at the University of Iowa voted to organize, to unionize. And they did not stress the fact that they're underpaid. Their bargaining points were all about patient safety.
Wow.
What happens when a person unexpectedly gets required, coerced, to work 16 hours? And so progress was made. And then, in the last year or two, our Republican legislature and our Republican governor essentially took away the right to collective bargaining, except one thing, salary. So our nurses are no longer able to bargain for safe practices. And so my question to you is collective bargaining an inalienable right? That's my question to you. Thank you.
Yes. Every single person in this country, if you are a worker in this country and this is your right to choose to join, to become a member of a union, you need to be able to have that right to collective bargaining. I think what you started out with is something that I've heard from a lot of folks in the healthcare field who are in this position of trying to negotiate with management or trying to improve conditions, is that the first request has not been about higher pay, even though it is deserved and needed. It is always about patient quality, the quality of the service that our providers are able to give to their patients. And I think that says a lot about those who choose this career path, who choose this field, that it is a choice to serve. It's not about trying to make a whole lot of money and buy a big fancy house and all of the selfish thoughts that may go into that. It's about how can I help take care of others. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. Yes, sir.
Oh, I guess I'm betrayed that I'm not up to date, but what is this horrible thing that Hillary said about
You want the whole story? I'll give it to you in a nutshell. Headlines were flying around yesterday quoting and pointing to Hillary Clinton's comments that she made in a podcast, basically saying that I am a foreign agent and a Russian asset. I had a few things to say about that, as you might imagine. Her comments revealed the truth that I've experienced for a long time now, which is that because I have been trying to bring about an end to our country's long-held foreign policy of waging one regime change war after the next, waging counterproductive wars to go and overthrow dictators in other countries, like the war that I served in Iraq, like the regime change war in Libya and the one that's ongoing in Syria today, because I have been and continue to be a strong voice calling for an end to this new Cold War and nuclear arms race we're seeing with escalating tensions between the United States, nuclear-armed countries like Russia and China. Because of my action and my call for an end to these wars and this arms race, I am labeled as a traitor to the nation that I love. This is a message that is being sent to every single American, every single veteran, service member, any one of us, any one of you who speaks out for peace, who speaks out calling for an end to these wasteful regime change wars, this new Cold War and arms race. You too are a foreign agent and a traitor to your nation. And they're doing this to try to silence us. Why? Why is this happening? Why is she coming after me in my campaign to be the Democratic nominee? It's because Hillary Clinton, as you mentioned, sir, she's been one of the leaders who have created this warmongering establishment within the Democratic Party and within Washington. And she and they know that I cannot be controlled. that they're not going to be able to manipulate me. If I'm the President of the United States, there is no Hillary Clinton puppet master from behind the scenes telling me what to do. I know exactly who I serve in this country. I serve the American people. I will put the best interests of the American people and our country at the forefront of every decision that is made. And I will bring the experience that I have of serving as a member of Congress for nearly 7 years on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, understanding very deeply the importance of our national security, as well as the experience I bring serving as a soldier. I still serve as a major in the Army National Guard today. I've been serving now for over 16 years and deployed twice to the Middle East, bringing those personal experiences, prepared to walk in on day one in the Oval Office to serve you as Commander-in-Chief. End these wasteful regime change wars. Stop being the world's police. Begin to de-escalate tensions with these other nuclear-armed countries. End this new Cold War and arms race. And take the dollars, the trillions of dollars that we've been wasting for so long on these wars and arms races, and instead redirect those limited resources back towards serving the needs of our people here at home, making sure that our healthcare providers have what they need to take care of our family, our loved ones. Make sure that we're investing in education, that we are investing in infrastructure, that we are taking care of our veterans, that we are providing that health care, whether it is the physical health or mental health needs, meeting those needs of our people. This has been my work and my message all along. This is the kind of change that I'll bring about as president. It's unfortunate that people like Hillary Clinton feel threatened by this message. But they will not stop me. They will not stop us as we continue to move forward, bringing our message of service to the people, putting people ahead of profits, people ahead of politics to the forefront, so that we can truly bring about the kind of change we need to see, both in our Democratic Party and in our government.
Yep. Last question.
I really liked that response, and I really liked your tweet yesterday to Hillary.
Thank you.
That was great. I haven't liked the format of the Democratic debates.
Yeah.
And I've thought that they show a lot of favoritism, and I thought you've been shafted a little bit by it. And I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations or ideas of how it could be done better.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. They've been frustrating me too. And I thought you're pretty kind and diplomatic in your assessment. Here's the problem: is these debates and the formats they've been set up, what they've used. It's really been more about entertainment value and providing like a political reality TV show where they focus more on those who are driving conflict and confrontation, rather than actually saying, all right, these debates are supposed to be an avenue to inform voters about where we as candidates stand on issues, on the important issues that we really care a lot about. As you've seen from, I think, every debate that we've seen so far, that's really not the case. I raised an issue in this last debate about the qualifications and who is fit to serve as Commander-in-Chief. They went to commercial break instead of actually getting the other candidates on this. I shared my own qualifications, the experience, the background I bring on national security and foreign policy. But instead of bringing that conversation to the other candidates on the stage, instead they said, nope, sorry, commercial break. You got to get that 4 minutes and 20 seconds of money in the door before we come back. And they never came back to this issue. The most important responsibility the president has is to serve as Commander-in-Chief. I would think as voters, you would want to know what kind of background and experience and qualifications every candidate is offering to bring to fulfill this most important responsibility. Especially as, what's happening in Syria. You look at what's happening with Iran. What's happening with this new Cold War. What's happening with Venezuela and Cuba. There's North Korea. There's so many issues and challenges that we face. But As long as the DNC partnered with their corporate media partners are more interested in holding their own kind of pre-election before you actually get to vote by saying, well, these are the only people that we think you should hear from. And the corporate partners are trying to figure out how they can make the most money off of these debates, then we're not going to see the kind of discourse and real debate providing you with the information you need on to compare and contrast us as candidates. So look, I think that the League of Women Voters and organizations like them, who are nonprofit organizations who traditionally have done a great job hosting these kinds of debates, should be the ones who are hosting it. Have it be a truly fair and objective moderator. They should not be running commercials. If they're going to air these on national television, which I think are helpful, they should not be for profit. They should not be for ratings. They should be about allowing more than a 30, 60, or 70-second response to a question. Let's have a real discourse and dialogue and allow you as voters, especially voters in these early states, allow you to fulfill the responsibility I know you all take seriously as first in the nation, to be able to say, this is the person who I think is best fit to be our Democratic nominee and to go on to defeat Donald Trump and to serve as President and Commander-in-Chief. Thank you. Last one. Yes, sir. Yes.
So this question was recently asked to Kamala Harris. Is there anything that Donald Trump has done in the last few years that you would think is good? You may not agree with the way he did it, but is there anything that you would, the outcome was worth it?
Yeah, sure. What did she say to that?
Nothing.
I'll give you two examples. One is the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement that was really heavily negotiated and pushed by the Obama administration, that I, under the Obama administration, spoke out strongly against, because I felt for three main reasons. One is it did not provide the kinds of protections to working Americans that was needed. It did not learn from the lessons of previous trade deals like NAFTA and others that have taken the livelihoods and the jobs from so many working people in this country, number one. Number two, it did not provide for the kinds of environmental protections necessary in a massive, massive trade deal like this. I think it ended up with 14 different countries being party to it. And third, which is directly connected with these other two, which is why they were so important, is that it ceded our sovereignty as a nation to a panel of corporations, essentially, as this ISDS panel that would have the authority to rule on disputes between signatory countries. Meaning, if this panel, again, not elected leaders from our government, but if this panel ruled, hey, the United States has to do this, or you have to comply with this rule mandated by this other country, they would have the power to overrule our domestic laws, whether they be national, state, or local. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I've served at every level of government. Our democracy works the way it is, and it's hard to navigate through sometimes, and yes, we need to do better, we need to do more, but there is no way that I will cede our sovereignty to another country or to a panel of corporations. When Trump got elected, he withdrew the United States from that trade agreement, and I agreed with that, and I agree with it still to this day. And by the way, I think it's important for us. We started this conversation talking about how voters, we feel like our government isn't listening to us. And part of the problem is that this hyper-partisan divide makes it, and it's on both sides, makes it so that if the other side does something that's actually good or makes sense, well, you got to criticize it because they're on the other team. Rather than looking at these issues for the substance that they are and actually thinking about how will they impact the people. And hey, look, if I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican and you've got a good idea or you've done something good And as I did when Trump pulled out from that deal publicly, I said, good, I agree with that. That's the right thing to do. When he does something wrong, as he has many times, I have been very vocal in calling him out for that. But that's how I believe, that's what we need to get back to. Get past the hyperpartisanship. We can debate vigorously on the things that we disagree on. We can do so without being disagreeable. But let's stay focused on the issues and how they impact the people, our country, and our planet. Briefly, the second example I'll give you is the one that's in the news a lot right now with regard to Syria. President Trump announced on December 24th of last year that he wanted to withdraw our troops from Syria. At that time, I responded to his statement saying, I agree, we need to get our troops out of Syria, but it must be done in a responsible manner. December 24th till October, I think 9th or 10th was the day that he announced the immediate, not withdrawal, but moving of our troops from the northern part of Syria at the border with Turkey farther south. So A, at that point, he did not announce withdrawing our troops from Syria. B, it was done in a very irresponsible way where he basically invited Turkey to come in and begin a genocide, an ethnic cleansing of the Syrian Kurds who I've gotten to know very well over the years. I've been to the Kurdish region in Iraq. I've met with the Syrian Kurdish leaders from Syria. One of them was my guest at the State of the Union in the last, I think it was last year. So the way that Trump has gone about this has resulted in the deaths of these Syrian Kurds, religious minorities, Christians, Assyrians, many other people. That didn't need to happen. What should have happened between his announcement and the withdrawal that we're starting to see of our troops from Syria was, first of all, stop lying to the Kurds. Our government has been telling them, we're going to have your back, we're going to protect you, we're going to be there for you, don't worry, we'll protect you from the Turkish invasion. But you're not allowed to talk to the Syrian government, you're not allowed to talk to Russia, you're not allowed to negotiate with the Syrian government or Russia to reconcile and find a common defense, create a common defense of that northern border. Our government stopped them from doing that. So what happened as a result? Immediate, hasty withdrawal, and that left the Syrian Kurds with the only option that they ever had. They're working with the Syrian government and Russia now to form a defense to stop the slaughter that's been going on. And now, of course, most recently, Trump sent Secretary of State Pompeo and Vice President Pence to go and, quote unquote, negotiate with the Turks, where they said, you've got a few days of a ceasefire, Kurds, to flee your homes, your tribal communities that you have called home for generations, leave everything behind so that Turkey can come in and take over. This is what happens when you have a president and commander-in-chief who has no clue what the hell he's doing. This is why it is so important to have someone in this position who has this foreign policy background and experience, both in foreign policy and national security, who understands how to think through these decisions, what's in the best interest of the American people and our national security. So while I agreed with Trump's initial statement that we need to bring our troops home in a responsible way, his execution has been an abject failure, and he has the blood of the Syrian Kurds on his hands as a result. Thank you.
Salvageable?
Is what salvageable?
The Kurdish situation.
It depends on what that looks like. I do not believe that our troops should remain in Syria indefinitely as a peacekeeping force or a border security force. Brett McGurk is someone who used to work under the Obama administration and then stayed over and continued working under the Trump administration. And he was actually working directly with the Syrian Kurds in trying to help them negotiate a political agreement that would ensure their security after we left. This administration blocked those negotiations from going forward, which is what has left the Kurds to slaughter by the Turkish invasion that's occurring as we speak. So what does salvageable mean? I think it depends on whose perspective you're looking at. I think that unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of knee-jerk reactions in Washington happening around this, where it's becoming very clear that people in positions of leadership in Washington have really no idea what's been happening there or what should happen next.
Has Ambassador Peter Galbraith been helpful at all?
I don't know the answer to that. There's a guy named James Jeffries who has been the major lead from the State Department on Syria, and he is absolutely, he is not only a part of the problem, he has been one of the drivers of why the Syrian Kurds have been left out to dry and to slaughter. All right. Sorry, this is all we have time for.
Can
Did
I
you
just
have?
ask one
Yes,
quick-
yes.
What can we do about Citizens United?
Citizens United is something that we, I think, can all agree needs to be overturned. There's legislation that we're supporting to be able to do that. There are efforts happening at the grassroots level to try to get a constitutional amendment to accomplish that. And I think we need to continue pushing at every level to bring about this change, however we need to get this big dark money out of our politics. There's a lot more that we need to do to root out the corruption within our own government, where special interests are exploiting both the loopholes in our system, but also the way our system is set up that allows those with a lot of money and a lot of influence to be the ones who are actually influencing the policies that are being passed that negatively impact our lives. Again, getting to the heart of what we must do together. And this is our call to action. Our challenge and our opportunity is to stand united, to stand together and root out the government of, by, and for the rich and powerful we have been suffering under for so long, and make sure that it is our voices and the voices of the people that come to the forefront, so that our government is truly one that is serving the people of this country. So I will close with this and just ask every one of you for your help in doing this, to stand with me in this. I hope you'll consider caucusing for me. I hope you'll consider joining our campaign now, volunteering, getting the word out, getting your friends, coworkers, family members, and others to be able to join our campaign. It is a campaign that is fueled completely by the people, no PACs, no lobbyists or corporations, and it is through the power of the people that we will be successful in fighting for our country and fighting for our future. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Scott and Blanche. Thank you, Pat.
Hello, everybody. Sorry we're out of time. So if you'd like a picture with Tulsi, well, first things first, if you'd like to help us on this campaign, we need help. If you want to volunteer for us, we have 2 tables, one over there and one inside here. Please join us if you can. And if you can help by a $5 donation, we love that too. And if you'd like a picture with Tulsi, please come up here, and no questions, no comments. We're going to do it right up